major surprises happened in these elections, especially surprises to those who did not read the inscription on the wall, because it was there. People talked about it, commentators talked about it, but unfortunately, Israeli politicians wake up only when it's too late. They tend always, or almost always, to learn about the future from the past. They cannot fathom that sometimes there is some kind of a gap between the past and the future. In another expression, it is called a surprise. We had one of those in 1973 when the inscription was on the wall, yet politicians and army people as well somehow did not read it. Now it was again. What was the inscription? First of all, the Likud expected to have some 40 Knesset members, mean third of the Knesset in the elections. Mainly because the Likud ran to the Knesset with a combination with Israel Beitenu, the Lieberman party, which combined had some 40 Knesset members in the Knesset, which finished its term a week ago. They got only 31. Means they lost some quarter. Instead of 40, they have 31. Some quarter of their power got lost. And the question is why? And look, if you lose 25% of your investment, something has to be investigated. It doesn't pass like this. It's not 2%. It's 25% almost. And the answer is, primarily, there were some answers, that the Likud actually was still fighting the last war, not realizing that a new war is around. Just like those Japanese soldiers who were found in the islands of the Pacific in the 60s and the 70s, and they are still fighting the Americans with rusty helmets, with rusty rifles, with uniform which is almost totally torn, and they did not realize that Nissan and Toyota occupied the United States of America already, those days. The Likud played on one string, the string of the security. Whoever took a tour in Israel during the last month saw giant signs, ראש ממשלה חזק לישראל חזקה. Means vote for us, for Netanyahu, because we need a powerful prime minister, so Israel will be powerful, and the implicit message is that Israel is under threat from our enemies, and if you want Israel to prevail, you have to vote for the Likud, because this way the Likud will be powerful, and we all will be powerful against our enemies. Very good. It did not work. The Israelis did not buy this slogan. And the question is why? Why? Do we have peace with all the Arab world? Don't we have Iran anymore as a threat? How come this message did not bring the desired result? The answer in two words is the Arab Spring, or the so-called Arab Spring. Because what happens around Israel is what I would say total mayhem. Syria, the most violent, vociferous enemy of Israel, since the establishment of state since 1948. Today, Syria is in a civil war between a regime which so far slaughtered 70,000 of its citizens. And they still keep going on killing them every day, between dozens and hundreds of people being killed in the streets. Children are being maimed, girls are being raped, because one man wants to stay in power. President, ruler, dictator, president, Assad, and his clan, his tribe, who support him in order to remain alive. Because they know very, very clearly that if they fail, they all, the Alawis, will be shortened by head. Because this is what already happens there when an Alawi village or neighborhood is being attacked, people are being slaughtered by the Muslims or by the Islamists or by the ultra-Islamist militias which fight on the Syrian soil for who knows how long. Syria is torn to pieces as a state, dysfunctional almost totally in its economy, infrastructure. Nothing works. Hundreds of thousands of units are destroyed totally. Like 10% of the citizens of Syria are refugees, either in Jordan, in Turkey, in Lebanon, or inside Syria. 10% refugees. Imagine 30 million Americans, refugees inside America, or in Mexico, or in Canada. This is the situation in Syria. People defect from the close circle of Assad. Ministers, prime minister, generals in the army, they all run out from this sinking ship like rats in order not to remain in it when it sinks totally. The Syrian army, instead of fighting against the enemies like the Zionists that they always were claiming, is much more preoccupied in killing Syrians. So far, in the last 2 years, the Syrian Air Force performed more flights against Syrians than it did in the 1948 war, 1967 war, 1973 war combined. So against whom do they have an army? In the wars with Israel, altogether, some 4,000, 5,000 Syrians were killed. In the war on the stability of the regime, on the sustainability of the regime, 70,000 were killed. So the priorities definitely are that the Syrian population actually is the enemy of the army and the state rather than Israel and the Zionists. If you compare the investment in this war against the population versus the war against Israel. So when we Israelis, when we look to the north to see who are our enemies over there, we see no Syrians as people who can threaten us, Israel, in the foreseeable future. Syria, destroyed as it is no threat on nobody, maybe the Syrians themselves. Lebanon, with Hezbollah, and nobody can deny the potential of Hezbollah. Now Hezbollah is also fighting in Syria because Hezbollah sent its troops to support Bashar Assad. And they are there fighting the Syrians. Israel can wait. Of course, Hezbollah might come out from Syria with some weapons which are rather dangerous, chemical weapons, and nobody can deny this possibility. But the overall strategic balance between Israel and the North, definitely the North is in a problem Syria definitely, Lebanon could very possibly be as well. If you see what happens every Montag and Donnerstag in Tripoli, in the northern part of Lebanon, where Alawis and Sunnis are fighting against each other, definitely a problem within Lebanon. When we Israelis look to the south, we see Egypt. Of course, a state which has a peace agreement with Israel, but as you know, the Muslim Brotherhood, those who govern this country since a year, they wouldn't sign any peace with Israel to begin with. They have this peace as a fait accompli, and they don't cancel it because they know that the price of canceling or even reducing the peace with Israel from embassy to something less than an embassy will cost them a hell of a lot of money, especially in this country where they receive their food from. And actually the problem of food in Egypt is the problem, because today the Egyptians, or not today, for 2 years already, lost the two main sources of foreign currency. One was external investments, and the second one was tourism. Investments and tourism, since Mubarak was ousted exactly 2 years ago, are totally non-existent in Egypt. The only source of income of foreign currency which remained is the Suez Canal, the fee which they collect from ships which cross the canal. And they know that if the situation with Israel deteriorates, prices of insurance for those ships which cross the canal will go very high up, and companies will refrain from sending ships through the canal. And the Egyptians will lose much of their income. Second thing, already twice the canal was blocked after the war of 1956 and after the war of 1967. Ships were stuck in the canal, and definitely it brought big losses to Egypt those days. Egypt cannot afford another period of closure on the canal, because they will lose the almost last source of income. They had some income from the gas which they were supplying Israel and Jordan by through a pipeline which went through Sinai. However, those Bedouins in Sinai, since they see Sinai as their own country, they blew this pipeline 14 times already until Israel gave up on it and told the Egyptians, we understood that you cannot control Sinai anymore. When you decide to renew the gas, let us know. Meanwhile, we buy energy from other sources. It costs more money, but at least it's reliable. So definitely, Egypt today is on the edge of the economic abyss, and today Egypt seeks loans from the World Bank, and the World Bank has conditions, mainly to reduce the subsidy on food, especially on bread, because today the bread is subsidized in some cases by 80% of its price. Means the Egyptian man in the street is paying some 20% of the real price, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to afford even to buy the most basic food in Egypt, which is the bread. Morsi cannot reduce the subsidies because people will burst to the streets if he does it. However, if he doesn't reduce the subsidies, he will not get loans. So in like 2 months from today, he will go bankrupt. So anyway, the prices of food will be higher because he will not be able to subsidize the bread anymore, so people will burst the streets. So if he reduces the subsidies, people will demonstrate against him. If he doesn't reduce the subsidies, people will demonstrate against him. So what is the better choice? You can decide, just like the flu. If you take care of it, it passes within a week. And if you don't, it passes within 7 days. So the same thing. So definitely, a war with Egypt, in my view, is not in the horizon, because a war is a very expensive thing. Fuel, ammunition, spare parts, everything of those is a big money. And Egypt cannot sponsor such a war now. So from the south also, Israel doesn't see a war or doesn't hear the tam-tam drums which come from the south. Egypt, as you might know, is a country of 90 million people. 30% of them live in unplanned neighborhoods, means boxes, with no running water, no sewage, no electricity, no phone, no internet. And they live like this in boxes, like 3 yards on 2. Everyone hosts a man, 3 wives, 15 children, and they have to survive in such conditions. So a country with such a problem, economic problem, definitely is not a threat, especially not in the forthcoming future. Jordan, on our east, according to many commentators, is on the edge of Arab Spring. Already they had demonstrations in Jordan with the sign Irhal, means go away, to the king. The same sign in the same font, which was in Egypt against Mubarak, in Tripoli against Gaddafi, in Damascus and other cities in Syria against Assad, in Yemen against Ali Abdullah Saleh, and all this is actually the slogan of those Arab countries which join this wave of Arab Spring. Irhal, go away, vanish, evaporate, all the above. These are the meaning of this Irhal. So already we saw it in Jordan against the king. Okay, it did not erupt yet in a mass which he cannot resist, but it might happen there as well. So when the Israeli man in the street looks around, he doesn't see why the first priority of Israel today is to be strong. We can deal with them the way we are, because anyway, there is no threat or direct threat from the Arab world on Israel. So now we can, as Israelis, try to take care of other things, like the prices of housing, whether purchasing apartments or renting apartments, prices of school tuition, which is considered to be high. Students in Israel pay like $3,000 a year in the university, like what, 10%? No, 5% from here. I saw in UPenn demonstration of students because they raised the tuition from $54,000 to $56,000 a year. Okay? Israeli students pay $3,000 a year, and they think that it is too much. You know, I hope that they get enough for this from us, the lecturers. So now the Israeli people think that it's time to deal with these things. And of course, cottage cheese. Yes, the prices of cottage cheese are too high, so there were demonstrations. Why not? And you know, cottage cheese is very important in Israel, because this is the closest thing for an Israeli to a cottage. So this is why he wants the price to be lower. And yes, so of course, you saw a year and a half ago the Occupy Rothschild Boulevard with the tents of those youngsters who demonstrated against the prices and the bad division of wealth in the country between the conglomerates and the men in the street. So definitely they had a point, and the government should have listened to them. And this was the inscription on the wall. And the Likud, unfortunately, when they concentrated on the security and Yisrael Chazaka, powerful Israel, they more or less missed the desire of the people, especially the youngsters in Israel, to see lower prices in housing, in tuitions, and cottages. So this was one failure of the Likud, that they concentrated on security and defense rather than what the man in the street, what bothers him in the daily life. This was one mistake which the Likud made. The other mistake was that they dedicated much of their propaganda against the Jewish Home Party and against Naftali Bennett, the leader of this party, mainly because the increase in the number of Knesset members of the Beit Yehudi, which I'll talk about, from 3 to 12, came at least partially on the expense of the Likud. So the Likud understood, they saw that voters are running away from the Likud to the Beit Yehudi, so they decided to attack the Beit Yehudi because they are taking their votes from them, from the Likud. They didn't understand that the Israeli man does not forgive to somebody who shoots inside the nagmash. And this is an expression which Israelis know. Nagmash in Hebrew is armored infantry carrier. There is BMP, whatever. These vehicles, armored vehicles, which can carry 10 fighters, 12 fighters, depend on the model. And they carry them into the battlefield while they are protected. These are these boxes with chains which run into the battlefield. You do not shoot inside this vehicle, only outside. Because if you shoot inside, you shoot your friends. And this is what the Likud did. They shot inside the nagmash. And there is no worse expression in Hebrew than this. To shoot inside the armored infantry carrier means that you shoot your friends. And this is what they did. And many, even of the voters of the Likud, did not like it. The fact that the Netanyahu team, I think they got also some support from Arthur Finkelstein, who came in order to help them. And he, maybe the one who designed this campaign against Bennett, he was not aware of this thing, that you do not shoot your friends, especially those who share with you the same worldview, that maybe will share with you the same coalition later. You do not dedicate at least good part of your propaganda campaign against them. You can do it against others, those who from other camps who might not be in your coalition. But your natural friends, you do not do this to them. Many look at this in very big resentment, but this is what they did. The second party on the list, the name of the party is Yesh Atid, but this party is identified by the name of Yair Lapid, the leader of this party. By the way, he's the son of Yosef Lapid, who was the leader of the Shinui party, formerly who passed away a few years ago. And they are rather different. He is not, of course, he's the son of his father, but definitely he has different message from his father, and many Israelis remember the father not in a good mood. many didn't like him. But Yair Lapid is a very popular guy. He made his fame in the television. He's a very elaborate man. He talks nicely. People like him and definitely voted for him, mainly because he is exposed to the media for many years. By the way, the Labour Party also is headed by another media star, Shelley Yachimowicz, who also made her fame or gained her fame in the radio and in the television as well. So Lapid, by the way, the different colors, the Likud and Jewish Home is the right-wingish, I color them by blue. The Labour, Meretz, are red because they are left. I added the Arabs because they are to the left, from the left, and if they support any coalition, it will be a left coalition. They will never support a right-wing coalition. So this is why I put them in the same color. Usually they don't join a coalition from within, they support it from the outside. And by green, I marked the parties in the center. With one exception, Shas culturally is from the right wing. But from the behavior point of view, they can join any coalition which will give them more money to their institutions. So because of their unique kind of behavior, I put them like in the center because they can join the left as they can join the right as well. So this is more or less about the colors. So the second is Lapid from the center with 19 Knesset members who, with Tzipi Livni, the movement party, are 25, which is actually more or less what Kadima had. And Kadima with 2, which will be between 2 and 0, so Kadima, Livni, and Lapid actually are the former Kadima, which shattered to pieces as this picture shows. This is the same constituency. From the right, from the center, those who do not want to identify with the right, but still do not like Shelley Yachimowicz on the left, of course, Meretz, so they vote for Kadima before, or for the last Knesset. Now they voted mainly for Lapid, some of them to Livni, and few remained loyal to Kadima. But this is the same thing. However, Kadima is what some of us say, a fashionable party, which lasts for either one Knesset or 2 Knessets. Kadima is the hire of, today these are the hires of Kadima. Who was the hire of Shinoi? Who was the hire of Dash from the 80s? And the Hamerkaz HaChofshi, if you want, of Shmuel Tamir, and all these center parties, which usually do not have an ideology, neither of the left nor of the right. They have a program of economy, of peace, usually not in every price, but seeking peace, development, all these things were very nice, but this is no kind of ideologies, more matters of how to enhance the daily life in Israel, and of course, against the conglomerates and the big companies and all this, which flatter to the man in the street who is not identifying anyway either with the right or the left. So this is a good part, a good chunk of the Israeli voter, and usually it is almost 30 Knesset members altogether. And this is actually because Lapid and Livni are 25, with Kadima 27, more or less quarter of the Israeli voters who are in the center and will not vote for the right and not from the left. Their agenda usually is agenda of enhancing the daily life, and this is actually where most of those voters from the youngsters who demonstrated in Rothschild Boulevard are there. Knesset members, new Knesset members, which came to Lapid and the Labor, are the leaders of this movement. Shafir and Shmuli and all those nice names of youngsters who led the Occupy Rothschild Boulevard movement, definitely now they are Knesset members because they gained much fame and much popular support. The Labour Party today is 15 Knesset members, and it had a potential of much more. Don't forget, there were years in the beginning of the state which the Labour Party led the country with majority almost of the Knesset, with 40 Knesset members, 50 Knesset members. Now there are 15. And this actually reflects the changes in the structure of the labor in Israel. Formerly, in the 60s, 70s, the trade unions were very powerful because most of the workers were organized in the Histadrut and all kinds of organizations which were part of the Histadrut. Little by little, the high-tech actually occupied a larger and larger part of the Israeli labor power. Means more and more people work for high-tech companies and not for other factories, for example. The rules of the game in high-tech is that you are not organized. Usually, high-tech companies do not accept any organized labor. Every worker works with what we say חוזה אישי, means personal contract. His salary is matter of negotiations between him and the management, not as a group, but as a worker, single worker. Usually people do not know what their partner's salary is. Usually people do not say what their salary is, and this is why the organized work in Israel today is less and less. This is why the Labour Party, which represents the trade unions, has less people who work in an organized organizations as they are today. And every 4 years, their numbers goes lower and lower. So this is one of the reasons. Another reason why this party, the Labour Party, lost its power, or lost part of its power, is because Sheli Yachimowicz, the leader, kept declaring that she will never join a government with Netanyahu, means right-wing government. Everybody knew that the only man who can make any coalition is Netanyahu. So to declare in the beginning, from the beginning, that you will never join it, it's actually burning the bridge on which you might cross this issue and join the government to influence it from within, and maybe to leave some right-wingish parties outside. Because if she joined the government, definitely the government would move a little bit in its standpoints to the center and maybe to the left as well. If this will be the only way for Netanyahu to make a coalition. So to declare time and again and again and again before the elections that means me, the Labour, will never join Netanyahu, this is counterproductive. If you want to influence, if you sit in the opposition, you can shout, but you don't have any influence. So why declare this? Especially when one of her prominent friends, Bougie Herzog, was a minister until recently. And definitely he has what to do in the government. He was a good minister of welfare. Definitely he has what to do there with Netanyahu. So why declaring that you will never join? So she actually pushed many voters who would vote for the Labour Party and want to see the Labour Party part of the government. So the fact that she declared that she will not join the government deterred them and pushed them maybe to Lapid, because he never declared that he won't sit with Netanyahu. Of course, if he succeeds to have enough jobs of ministers, deputy ministers, and policies, definitely he will join. Why not? What are you running to the Knesset for? To shout or to do some things? So definitely here, Yachimowicz made a very big mistake, and it cost her at least 4 or 5 seats in the Knesset. But the biggest surprise of these elections was the Jewish home, the Beit Yehudi. If you guys do not believe yet that the resurrection will happen, I mean, Tchiyat HaMeitim, you better believe now. After what happened with this party. Because the Mafdal, which is the mother party of the Beit Yehudi, Miflaga Datit Leumi, the National Religious Party, the constituency of the National Religious Party is with my late father in the cemetery. Of course, in Israel there is some phenomenon of resurrection every elections, yet, but the numbers are not that significant. So definitely, those who 30 years ago voted for the Mafdal and gave her 12, even more Knesset members, when Yosef Burg was the leader of this party, definitely today lie with Yosef Burg and my late father in the same cemetery. So this party actually was bound to vanish in these elections, mainly because it did not pump new blood into the old veins. The same Askuna, or the old guard of machers who were in this party remained for many years, and no youngster, for my children, for example, would even think about voting to this national religious party. However, half a year ago, by some kind of a miracle, this party decided to renew its ranks, and all of a sudden new faces came and replaced the old ones. First is the leader, Naftali Bennett. Young guy, I think is less than 40 years old. The dream of every Israeli. First of all, he is bold. I don't know, but it flatters to some. You don't have to comb your head every morning. It's easy. Secondly, he has a small kippah on his head. Means not a big one, and it is a message. Third, he served in the army in Sayeret Matkal. Sayeret Matkal is the highest elite infantry commando unit, which performs the most unbelievable actions and operations of the IDF. If Israel wants a tooth from the Morsi's mouth without him feeling that a tooth was taken from him, this unit will do the job. And believe me, they do things which are much more courageous and much more complicated than bringing a tooth from Morsi's mouth. Believe me, I worked with them when I was in the intelligence, and what they do actually reflects what is written in the Bible. Kol hashomea tetzilena shtei oznav. Everybody who will hear what they do, his 2 ears will ring from what he hears. Definitely, Sayeret Matkal is the top elite unit in Israel. Now, Naftali Bennett was there not a simple soldier, which is enough courageous. He was there a major, higher than Netanyahu, who also served in this unit. So definitely somebody with good credentials as a courageous man who can take decisions in difficult situations, and a good dream of many Israeli boys. Then he was for some years the Mazkir Moetzet Yesha, the Secretary General of the settlements in the Judea and Samaria. Another good job which shows what his political views are. And then he, for some months, was the manager of Netanyahu's bureau. and he left, according to all the rumors, he doesn't say why, but the rumors were that he got in trouble with Sarah Netanyahu, and I think that even it adds to his image because he is one from many others who managed to get in trouble with this lady. And the last thing which grabs attention to this man, that he is very successful entrepreneur. He had a company which dealt with credit cards, and I think that somebody told me that any credit card transaction in the internet today uses one of his algorithms, which we invented in this company. And he, as we say in Hebrew, hu asa exit. Means he made an exit. This is a Hebrew word, if you don't know. Means he sold the company for good money. And yes, he has good bundle of money. I heard somewhere that he gains $150 million, maybe with some partners. So apparently he will not need envelopes with cash money. You know whom I mean. And if he becomes a minister, and all the minister will drive with Skoda, that's the standard car for ministers in Israel, and he will drive a Lexus, this will be his own, his private car, and he will use his private credit card in order to fuel it. Okay, so nobody will have anything to say if he drives a Lexus, unlike other ministers who will get from the country, from some Skoda or something like this. Okay, so definitely he has what he needs. He doesn't need envelopes and support. Another good reason why every Israeli would like to be attached to this kind of man. What he did also, he put into his party a very important figure in Israel today, a young lady named Ayelet Shaked. She is not religious, at least not according to the regular standard definition of a religious or modern Orthodox in Israel. She is 36 years old, she has 2 kids, and a husband who is a combat pilot. So in every picture where they're together, you can see her, you can see the kids, but his face is erased, as if he doesn't have any face, because this is the law in Israel. You cannot show pilot's face in public. So definitely something which is very nice. And she established some 4 years ago an organization named Yisrael Sheli in order to promote the hasbara of the state of Israel. She consulted with many people and she put out a very good program of how to enhance the Israeli hasbara. I myself also tried to help her in this endeavor as well. Definitely a good lady which dedicated much time and wit in order to promote Israel, and she drew much public attention. So she is part of the Beit Yehudi, which is the national religious party. Now, listen to this, and this is very important. Naftali Bennett and his chevre took out the word religious from the name of the party. It's not anymore the National Religious Party. It is Beit Yehudi, without the word religious. And this is a very important message, because today the religious youngsters do not want to be associated with anything which is sectarian and sectorial, only religious. In the army, they served with non-religious. In the university, they are with non-religious. In the public sphere, they are with non-religious. They do not accept this division. They don't see themselves as different. They don't want to vote to anything which will declare itself as something religious. They are religious, but they don't make from their religion or the fact that they are religious, they don't make any group out of it. They do not want to see this issue. So Naftali Bennett was clever enough to take out from the name of the party the name religious party, and now it's Habayit HaYehudi. Now in every Bayit Yehudi, there are those who are more and those who are less, those who wear a bigger kippah and a smaller kippah, and those who have the kippah in their pocket, and those who don't have the kippah even in the pocket, and everyone is the Bayit Yehudi. So when he brands this party in this name, Habayit HaYehudi, he actually flatters to everybody who identifies himself as a Jew, not as a religious. So definitely this was flattering to many non-religious people in Israel, and they voted for this party. And this is why the Likud lost some Knesset members to this particular party. So the changes in the religious mindset and the changes in the overall Israeli mindset pushed this result to where it is now. More attention to social issues, less to being religious, less to security and defense issues. Definitely this is what we see today. Another important point which we should mention here, that I think like 40 of the new members, of the Knesset members today, like third of the Knesset are religious people. Because also Lapid has this number 250 is a Rav. The one who was Mesader Kiddushin in one of my son's wedding. Definitely popular figure in the Jewish, in the religious circles. And Lapid put him into the party because, again, parties want to be today bridge between religious and non-religious, and not sectarian. So this is actually what I believe, not a small number of religious people voted for Lapid, also because of this Rav, who is the Rav Piron, which is the second, not the number 13, the second to Lapid. Definitely this man will be a minister if Lapid joins the coalition. So now, if we go to the numbers, and we try to reach 65. 65 is the ideal number of coalition. 61 coalition cannot function almost because all the Knesset members are grounded to Israel. They cannot leave the country. And a Chaver Knesset without a trip at least once a month to this country is something which has to be checked. Why he can't come. This is not something which they could accept. So having a coalition of 65 gives them good margin of little trips to all kinds of places in the world to make them feel that they are important people. So 65 is good number, 61 is too low. So now we can start to calculate Likud with Lapid, which is we already have 50. So only they need the Jewish home to have 62, and the Haredim will join anyway because they need the money. Shas is also candidate to jump in order to need the money. But now, there are many declarations and many announcements by all kinds of politicians in Israel. I'm joining, I'm not joining, I will never join. I have good advice to everyone. Until the minute that the government is presented to the president, this is the law, with the signed coalition agreement, I advise not to listen, not to read in the papers, not in the television or nothing. Because everything which those politicians are saying until that minute is a psychological warfare on each other. If Netanyahu says that I don't want to see such and such party in my government, you can be more than sure that already he sits with them day and night, and now he only tries to reduce their price by saying that he doesn't want them inside. so they will reduce the price, so we will bring them in. And if a politician says that I will never join the government, you can be more than sure that he's already got the promises, but he wants more. So he says that he will not join in order to gain more for the fact that he crawls into the government anyway. So this is how the name of the game there. But there is another shtick which also appears in Israel, that at least theoretically, parties can divide. And it doesn't really happen, it usually happens in the beginning. It happens after a year or two when all kinds of rifts appear inside the parties. And if I understand, all the four parties, the first ones, might suffer from this issue. That in the Likud, we definitely know that there are some more right-wingish and there are some who are less. Dani Danon, Tzipi Chotoveli usually pull the Likud to the right side. Former Knesset members like Benny Begin, Meridor, pulled the Likud to the left side. So to keep the Likud united when the horses pull it to different directions was not an easy mission for Netanyahu. Lapid will have the same. The Labour Party also could have the same, but I think that the Jewish home is the most likely to suffer from cracks in it, mainly because the fact that at least one is not religious, Ayelet Shaked, and she's a very opinionated young lady, and on the other side they have some Rabbanim over there, like Eli Ben Dahan, and there could be differences when it comes to votes in the Knesset in questions connected to state and church, or state and the synagogue, I would say. Definitely, Ayelet Shaked might see things in different way than Eli Ben Dahan, and there is no way to force a Knesset member to vote according to the party line. The party will take revenge after 4 years when somebody finds himself out from the list. So but as long as Knesset is there, you cannot maintain any force or any pressure on Chaver Knesset. He is free to vote the way he likes. So this might be also something from the scenery which we're going to see, that these parties might divide themselves as well. This is more or less about this. And definitely what happened around Israel, Arab Spring, influenced the results of the elections, and the sense of a bastion against the enemies is a bit lessened in Israel, and the Israelis today take care more now about take care of economic issues, social issues, and things which formerly were much more in the margin. Now these things are much more in the center and influence the results to large extent.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support Shalom TV with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the Shalom TV website homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to GEM, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive on DVD with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.